Welcome, everyone. Wow, there's so many people popping up. So nice to see each of you here. If you would, please just keep your mic on mute until everyone has a chance to arrive. Thank you.
Shall we start, Kelsey?
Sure. Yes, we still have people popping in by the moment. So please, go right ahead. And I hope that everyone enjoys the session. Please reach out to me if you need any technical assistance.
Sure. Would you please turn off cameras of everyone except the presenters? Thank you.
Hi, Kelsey.
Aaron, good evening. It's so nice to see you.
Likewise.
Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Rock Schreiber, and I'm a general manager of high performance programs at the ACA. I will moderate this session. I'm assisted by Kelsey Braswell, who is our technical manager. And as you see, she can control your camera and mine as well. Before I introduce today's speakers, I want to clarify a few housekeeping items. Please refrain of using your cameras and speakers during presentations. I would prefer if you can turn them off. Please refrain from interrupting speakers during presentations. And if you have a questions, please write it down and ask it during the Q&A time after presentations. You can also utilize Zoom comments function to type in your questions. During the Q&A period, after presentations, we will try to answer as possible. With that, Kelsey, could you please launch the polls that we have? So whoever is on the call, please read the question and answer as appropriate. We'll wait another minute or so that people can answer, and then Kelsey will show the results. Actually, results, I think, are being adjusted as we speak. So we have a 98% of the participants that have voted. So perhaps a minute or two, and then, or excuse me, a few seconds, and then we should close the poll. All right, here we go. So what we see is on the first question, are you a current member of ACA PAC or any other paddling club? We have 60% of attendees today who are members, 34 who are not, 4 who used to be, and 1 participant who is not sure. If you're a member of ACA PAC or other paddling club, which categorization best fits your club? There is no one here from university or recreational program. We have about 48% who are members of a non-for-profit paddling club, privately owned clubs, 16%, and I'm not a member of a club, 36%. Functions of the club, 14% board chair or president, 12% board members, 1 executive director, 2 paid staff, 14% or 7 volunteer staff, club members 22%, and other 32% or 16 participants. Thank you so much. And with that, I want to introduce the 2 speakers for tonight. Aaron Houston is the executive director and head coach of the Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak Racing Team, which is one of the largest and best run clubs in the US. He will present first. After Aaron's presentation, we will hear the words of wisdom from Mike Schillinger, the immediate past president of the Tennessee Valley Canoe Club. The Tennessee Valley Canoe Club is one of the largest recreational paddling clubs in the country. Please welcome speakers. Aaron.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I'm not seeing my presentation on the.
It's coming right here.
There we go. Excellent, excellent. So first, I just want to say welcome and thanks for coming today. I'm hoping that between my presentation and Mike's presentation that we can help you realize your club dreams. Let me just, I like to have a view of some of the people. There we go. All of your club dreams will come true. Now, Rock, there's only about 60 people here, and I just want to mention that you promised me fame and fortune if I did this presentation. So I want to make sure that we get that somewhere along the line. Okay.
Well, it's been recorded, so
okay, all right.
Many
so
more will be able to see it later.
There'll be some royalties then, Mike, for us. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what this is hopefully a broad overview of logistics of running a club, and I'll run you through the logistics of running a competitive club, a competition club, if you will, and then Mike has the recreational nonprofit side covered. I'm going to provide some specific examples of how we do things. I've had some success in this, which means that I've also had quite a lot of failure. So I'm hoping to share some of those lessons. Hopefully this is a toolbox ideas. This is not the one right way, the only way, or the best way, or a one size fits all. You've got to look at your club, figure out what it is you want it to do, and then make policy and practices from there. Next slide. Great. Oh, okay. I'll just spend 2 seconds talking about myself. I'm the executive director and head coach. We have about 95 members. We're just outside of Seattle. I was the former national team coach for the last 4 years. I coached Nevin Harrison, who won the world championship and a berth into the Tokyo Olympics in 2019. I have about 20 years in coaching in various sports. And for my actual job that I pay the bills with, I'm a nurse practitioner in the ICU here in Tacoma, which has been rather busy lately. And I have 3 kids, 1 dog, and my wife will remind me to tell you that I have way too many boats. I keep insisting that the correct number of boats is N+1. Okay, so why organize a club? Well, the people that are on this call and people in paddling in general, you're here because you have a vision of how something could be and what it could do for the community. And the thing that most people find after putting in a long career trying to organize things is they want that legacy to survive. That they want that legacy to go on and go on to the future. So organizing, I would say the first reason to organize is so that your club becomes something that is bigger than yourself. What we don't want is a club that's run just by 1 or 2 people, so that when they retire or have grandkids or move on, or job takes them to move somewhere else, that the club sort of falls apart. We don't want that. So being sustainable is really important. You want to build membership and enable financial success. Paying the bills, the ability to pay coaches, the ability to buy stuff helps. If you're in a situation where you have coaches and or instructors, you want those guys to be focusing on their role of doing the coaching and instructing, and not focused necessarily on the bill paying and the rent is due and the buying of the equipment. Acquiring equipment is really important. It's really important with us in a competition sprint club. These boats are generally made in Europe, so they're $3,000 to $8,000 a piece. They have to be shipped and all that. So that's important. Our particular club is a lot about performance. So we are trying to compete with the other clubs in the country. There's a national championship that we're always trying to win. We have athletes going on to international performance, and we're always trying to kind of increase that performance. And then the other reason is it engages parents and athletes. And when you engage people and make them feel that they're part of something bigger, then that really helps. Okay. Why is the ACA interested in sporting clubs? Well, sort of like the family, feeling that the club is sort of the basic building unit in the sport. The more clubs, the more members, and the more successful opportunities for people to be paddling, whether that's recreational, whether that's sprint, that's flat water, that's slalom, etc. I think, and the last 4 years has really proved this to me, that if we had a nation full of really strong clubs, then we're going to have strong national teams, and we're going to have a very strong and robust member base. All right. So what drives the structure of your club? There are lots of ways to structure a club, and we're going to talk about a few of those. But the thing to ask yourself, I think, initially is, what is the why? What is the club for? In our case, my case, most of our members are kids. So, and all of them are competing nationally, and they want to go on to international. So we have a very specific mission, and yours might not be that. It might be something completely different, and that's totally fine. What you want to do is write that down. You want to be very specific and write that down. I would say, when you envision success, what is it that you want to see? We always, when we're setting up new initiatives in our clubs, or when I talk to other club leaders, I always ask them, what's the ideal situation? What's the dream of your club? And then we can work back from there, instead of focusing on one specific policy. What is the ideal? Then we just work back. Okay. And then there might be specific elements that are important to you. In our club, helping kids learn to struggle and have that delayed gratification that comes with training long-term and making year by year improvements. We think that's a vital skill for youth. So that's a huge part of the element for our club. All right, next, there we go. So opportunity to be competitive at the highest levels, service in our local community. I just mentioned this character through struggling to achieve. Struggling to achieve is like our main thing. Teaching kids that they need to struggle to achieve, and then that they're part of something bigger than themselves. Next. Some qualities of great teams. I mainly want to put this on here. You can think of a lot of words to describe great teams. And I've listed a few here, but I think I wanted to point out that this company called Proactive Coaching by Bruce Brown, there's these little pamphlets they have, and they can be used for recreational, for competition, for teams, and they're very inexpensive, and they're very useful. There's lots of things like this out there. You don't have to invent new mottos or new personal philosophies. You can look out there, see what's there, and kind of adapt. Here we go. All right, so for example, these are some of the pamphlets that this guy has that we use a lot of. But from there, we basically have 3 rules, and all the kids on the team know this. They can repeat this back to you. And number 1 is to show up. And so that addresses your physical self. You need to be there physically every day. Number 2, it's not enough to just show up. That means really you have to bring your mindset. You have to be practicing diligently. And then number 3 is the I'm not here for myself. So that really approaches what it is to be an athlete and to have the heart of a champion. That's kind of what we say. So we've got number 1 is the physical, number 2 is the mental, and number 3 is the heart. And you're part of the team, and you're representing the United States, you're representing your town, your parents, yourself, etc. And we feel that if we take care of that team culture, then the results take care of themselves. And that's turned out to be true. And we've won the last 7 out of 8 national championships with this mentality. Next. So I said before, we talk about types of clubs, and there are basically 3 main types. There are privately owned, like individual coach owned, or sometimes instructor owned in the recreational world. And the good part about that is there's just 1 or 2 people that have the vast amount of authority to make decisions. So things can be very efficient. The second one is the nonprofit and board run. And then the third is institutional. So you can see that basically when you have coach owned or individual owned, you're going to have tons of authority. The good news is, you get to make all the decisions. The bad news is you have to do all the work. And that kind of goes down from there. You might have less ability to have authority, but you might have a lot more resources if you're part of a recreation district or a university club or something like that. All right. Our team, Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak Racing Team, which is a crazy long name, was founded about 17 years ago. It's board run. It's a nonprofit. I'm happy to say that we now have 96 members, 95 to 96 members. We have 5 volunteer committees. We have 7 coaches, and then we have 2 coach interns. Those coach interns are athletes that decided they didn't want to compete anymore, but they wanted to take part in the team, and they were really positive people who had good character. So we're utilizing them to kind of do some of those coaching tasks. When you're talking about staff for a club, we have salaried staff coaches. We have 2 staff coaches. In other words, these people are being paid to run the club. They're being paid to think about the club even when they're not at practice. We have hourly coaches who they show up to practice and their job is to coach at practice, but they don't handle all these side things like fixing the outboard motor or fixing the trailer or do that. They just do the coach. So our view is a staff coach is a salaried position and they have to think about the club's success long-term. Whereas the hourly coaches are a lot of our athletes who who are in college and they have time to come to practice, but they're not going to be concerning themselves with advertising, updating the Facebook page, etc. We have coach meetings once a month. Our hourly coaches make about 15 to 17 an hour. Our intern coaches make $13.50 here in Washington. That's the minimum wage. And then at our coach meetings, we're always working to develop our coaches. We feel that, that's just the gift that keeps on giving. Every moment I spend with our coaches upping their game, that just trickles down and that's going to hit all the members. So that's really important. I would say staff development is a overlooked item in most clubs that I see. For our coaches, we require CPR first aid. We have chase boats that we use, so they get trained on annually. They have to have a boater's card here in Washington State. They're trained in safe sport, which is probably true also in recreational clubs. If you're dealing with any kinds of kids, you're going to need everyone's safe sport. I cannot emphasize enough for you to have everyone safe sported and have a policy in place to protect the club, protect the athletes, and protect the coaches. They have background checks, and then we have in sprint canoeing and kayaking, there are 3 levels of International Canoe Federation coaching levels, and we pay for them to get their level 1. Yep, next. So I'm going to go through with you the 1-pager. I'm big on having a 1-page description of every part of your club. Sadly, we made the font big enough so it's no longer on 1 page, so that you could read it. But it all goes on 1 page and basically lists everything a potential member is going to want to know. So we have our program overview with our coaching staff, our training location, our training season. We have 5 groups, and it's said exactly how many times a week they practice, who the coaches are going to be, and how much it costs. And it's very clear in every single one of those. Okay. One thing before we get to the next page is our financial commitment. We ask that families, when they sign up for the club, that they pay 3 months, not all at once, but that they commit to doing 3 months. And the reason for that is it's very difficult to hire and fire and up the number of hours of staff and coaches on less than a 90-day basis. So I need to be able to have time to say, hey, we're not going to need you on Mondays, or whatever that might be. So that's a really important thing to ensure financial stability. Otherwise, you have people jumping in for 1 month, then they're out the next month, then they're back the next month, and staffing and buying boats and things like that becomes a huge problem. All right, next. All of our members of our club are members of the ACA. They have to have competition memberships. We provide basic boats. So we provide, in the sprint world, there are development boats that are less tippy, basically, than the personal boats, than the racing boats. So we provide boats for them to learn in. We provide PFDs. We provide some paddles. They're not awesome, but they're durable and a little bit beat up. We encourage them and we help them. We coach them through buying their own boat. Having their own boat really increases their success. And frankly, the club can't possibly afford to buy boats for every athlete. So we basically help them buy their own boat. The average athlete in a year goes to between 4 to 6 regattas. Nationals is included in there. Nationals is about a $300 or $400 fee in addition to travel and things like that. We ask that all of them come to nationals. We think the more people at nationals, the better for the sport. I've listed here the fundraising. We do active fundraising. We have one major fundraising event a year, and we ask that everyone get involved. And we make it very clear up front, right on this one pager, that the club's run by volunteers and all families are expected to participate. All right. I always put the fiscal policies on here. No one wants to get bit with something later. I once worked for a club that had a volunteer policy where they mandated that you had 30 hours of volunteer time, or at the end of the season, they would charge like $10 an hour. Well, it got very unpopular at the end of the season because it was kind of viewed as a small print thing. We don't do that at our club, but I've seen that done before. So I always make sure we get that. That's on the one pager. So when they are signing up, everyone knows kind of what they're getting into. So for us, all of our billing and registration is done on our website. None of the coaches or staff or board handles any money. And that cuts out a lot of problems. So I'll explain our website here in just a little bit. We do charge an annual registration fee. They get a t-shirt that covers some of the maintenance. We have like little screws and seats and hardwares and paddles and things we have to buy throughout the year that get either damaged or lost. That kind of covers that. We do provide temporary financial assistance for those families that are experiencing hardship. We don't do a multiple athlete discount. That's very popular in clubs that operate with kids. We find that very difficult to do budgeting. If we do that, you never know how many kids you need at what price to pay for a program. We let kids do what they want as far as participating in other sports or high school sports. We ask them to work with their coaches on that. We do require, if you want to cancel membership, we require it to be told by the 20th of the prior month. Just so that we can make the billing changes. All of our billing and things are done. That website that does all the automated parts is overseen by a parent volunteer, an administrator. And so that person has a normal job and this is not their full-time job. So they need time to be able to do that. All right, next one. So billing best practices. When I got to my club, we had a lot of problems with billing. We had people with overdue accounts. We had people where we weren't sure if they had paid. And so we started the automated billing. And through the website, that just cleans up everything. No one handles money. It's all kept track of. There's a paper, or not a paper, but a digital record of every single transaction so we can tell. It just emails me at the end of the month how many things that got charged and how much money we got at the end of the month. It emails the whole board and I. And that's really helpful. It gets deposited right to our bank account right on time. You can refund, you can set up customized billing if you want. It's not dependent on one single staff member. It's not dependent on anything. I recommend that clubs do monthly billing instead of quarterly or yearly billing. And the reason for that is it can spread the larger costs out over the course of a year. It's easier for families to budget, and it's much, much easier for the club to budget. So in our case, we need to be able to pay our coaches year round. And we can't just pay them when in the summertime when the sport is popular. If we want to attract high level talent and coaches and buy equipment, we have to have a constant stream of income. So we just tell the parents that it's not a big deal. We tell all our members that, and they seem to like that just fine. The evidence is in on the subject of billing, and clubs that use automated billing do much better financially and are general way more sustainable. So we do consider that a best practice is to automate your billing somehow, use some sort of website system. Next. Fees and pricing, you know, I put this up here, and I know some people in the audience, I can't see you, but I know some of you are going, holy moly, that seems like a lot of money. And I get that. Keep in mind that this is a competitive team, not unlike a swim team or a premier soccer team and whatnot. Our prices are actually a little cheaper than the local swim team, which I also coach, and a little bit more expensive than premier level soccer. Keeping in mind that we have to have chase boats. We don't rent fields, but we do have to keep chase boats running with gasoline and outboard motors and all of that. And what I do to kind of make sure that I'm not going crazy with what we're offering, I don't mind billing a fair price for a fair product. So I just added up how many hours a week. So group 1 is our most competitive group. That's the group that's trying to get onto Team USA. So these prices are okay. I mean, in a 4-week month, 76 hours, they're really paying $2.75 an hour. And put like that, it doesn't seem quite as bad and quite as expensive. So I put them all out here so that everyone can see them. So I do get some questions about why is group 1 less expensive than group 3? Group 3 is our beginner group. And the reason there is we simply have to have more supervision for younger athletes on the water because they're younger, it's more unsafe, and we have to keep eyes on them at all times and making sure that everything is, we're providing more equipment for them, etc. Our pricing, no one's getting rich, sadly. You know, we make up our budget, what we think we're going to spend that year, and then we figure out how many paying members we're going to have, and then we just divide it up, and that's where we get our prices. I will say this: in clubs that I've coached in the past, when we make things really cheap, thinking that we're doing people a favor, at least in the kids' world, I end up doing quite a lot of babysitting. And so there is a value perception about things that are low fee and low cost sometimes. And that can sort of, that can ruin the idea that what you're providing is really excellent. There's also a value perception on the part of coaches and instructors. Some of you may be thinking, who are listening to this right now, might be thinking, you know, I'm not doing this for the money. And that's true. You can still be not doing it for the money, and yet not lose your shirt. So I would encourage you to strike a balance if you want to be sustainable, is to make sure your club has enough money to survive. We do offer scholarships. We have a rainy day cash reserve fund of $25,000 in the bank at all times. I always think of, you know, if we use this money to buy equipment, so we're providing more service and more opportunity with the income that we're getting. And then, like I said, the club, does it have staying power after I leave? Are they all set up for success? That's really important. Next. Okay, so athlete recruitment. How do members end up on our team? Well, as is true, I'll bet, even in the recreation world, members end up on your team after an event, I would guess, after some kind of event, whether that be a training camp, a paddle, a festival, a fair, something like that. We have a summer camp, a developmental summer camp, and we do 3 one-week camps that are 3 hours a day for 6 days. The camp cost is $195, which is about 80% of the price of a soccer camp around here. The kids bring their own lunch. We use 1 or 2 of our staff coaches, and then we use older athletes to coach. So that's pretty cost effective for us. We use surf skis, Vipers, and then these special canoes called Cape canoes that are really stable. And we have about 20 kids in the camp. We always have a waiting list. The very best age to start sprint canoeing is 11 years old. So we offer between 9 and 13. We meet with the parents before the camp starts. We meet with the parents at the end to see if they want to join our summer team. And that goes all the way through the end of September. And then at the end of September, we meet with them again. And we've had now all this time to see if this kid is ready to join the year-round team. And the parents have had the idea of kind of gotten used to the idea. And basically we invite the kids onto the team if they like it, if they are showing, good effort, and they're having fun. And it's pretty simple. They work 3 times a week, and it's a pretty easy process. We end up getting, on a team of like our size, we end up getting about 15 to 17 kids every year, and we lose about 4 or 5 kids throughout the winter. And when I say I lose, they're still alive. They're just not with our club. They just, it gets cold here. It's Seattle. You might have heard it's a little bit rainy. And so it gets rather cold being on the water, 3 days a week. And so some of them just decide, this is not for me. And that's fine. I regret that it didn't work out, but I also usually when if there's, a sense that the kid doesn't like it, it's not going to be good to try to make them. A lot of parents sometimes need reminding about that. We have fewer than 5% of our kids join the team via a tryout. We have a tryout. You can just email us up and say, I'd like to join the team. We have you come down, we try out. That's mainly to make sure you're comfortable around the water. You don't have to have any skill per se. They paddle for free for a week. We get them a small ACA membership, so we're covered insurance wise to do that. After 3 months, we only have 35% retention. Those people that come to the tryout and then join the team, we only have about 1/3 of those that continue with the team after. It's generally not nearly as good as summer camp. And I think the reason is there's a cohort dynamic at work in summer camp. You showed up at summer camp with all kids, and then you kind of worked your way through the process all together, kind of like a class or a cohort. There's a sense of struggling and working and learning together that's just not there with a kid who tries out or walks on. Next. Yep, I think I mentioned all those things. So let's go on. I want to make sure we have time for Mike's presentation. We have 3 groups, and just to quickly say, we have 3 groups. They have different levels that they need to go through. We advance them once or twice a year, and we make a big deal out of advancing them. So a group 2 athlete is usually a middle school level athlete. A group 1 athlete is generally a high school level athlete. But there can be group 2 athletes that are high school level. If they don't want to compete and they're not interested in going all out all the time, there's no reason to try to make them do that. There's plenty of room on the team for people who just love being around the water and want to go paddle. That's completely fine. So we don't make anyone do anything. It's not like an age group thing. But when they do want to race, we make sure that their goals are aligned. We really ask for their commitment, and it's a pretty motivating thing to be asked to move up. And so we make a big deal out of that. We use that, leverage that to our advantage. Okay, next. Yep, I said that. Yep. One thing I want to mention here is that the season is defined as October to October. And I think that's really good practice. When I first got to the club, there was no defined season. People were just members or they weren't. If you redo it every October, you can make sure they all have up-to-date ACA. You can renew their safe sport if they need that, their CPR if they're coach. You can learn about if they moved. You can get rid of any members who are no longer actually members. So it's a chance to go through the books, make sure everything's good, re-budget, kind of redo everything. I strongly recommend that you have a start and a stop to a season, even if your particular brand of paddling isn't really season oriented. Usually it is though. Usually weather kind of dictates it, even in a recreational sense. So I strongly recommend you have a start and a stop so that you can get people re-registered and reinvigorated. Okay, next. So our club practice schedule, I mentioned this earlier. Group 1 is getting 19 hours of practice a week. That's a lot of practice for a high school kid. That's as much practice as any kid that age needs. we are among the most in the country, not the most, but one of the most. Group 2 practices every day, but they're on the water 4 days a week, and then they have gym 2 days a week. And gym for a middle schooler is simple body weight stuff, pull-ups, push-ups, running, squats, those kinds of things. In summer, it goes to doubles. Everyone can do double practices, morning, afternoon, with summer camp between. And yeah, next. So the strengths of our club are that there's really strong club values, core objectives, and we make sure that those are front and center with our members. We provide the equipment. We do a video review technique session every week. We have a lot of engagement with our activities. We have a Halloween costume contest. We have a holiday party. We have an Easter egg hunt where we hide Easter eggs all around the harbor, and they have to get on their boats and go try to find them. That's pretty fun. We do a lot in merchandise. Some of our weaknesses are it's not particular to our club per se, but kids like to get into the really super tippy racing boats right away because that's what's fun and what's considered being older and faster. But if the truth is, if they move into a racing boat too soon, they end up messing up their technique, and sometimes they can get injured. So that's that's something we're always trying to shore up. And then the other thing is we have a large team. I mentioned the size of our team before, and being in groups is great. I mean, they have a peer, they always are surrounded by peers. There's always a feeling of friendship, like they're part of something, but sometimes I wish I had a little bit more time with each individual athlete. So what we have to do is we just have to be extra mindful about making sure kids are getting all the attention they need. Next. Money. Okay. The topic no one likes to talk about. Money. How do we earn it? Well, we earn it through membership dues, fundraising that we call big fundraising, and then we have small fundraising. So an example of each, our membership dues are the membership dues I mentioned before, the 140, 160, or 180 per month, depending on what level they're paddling at. We have one big fundraising event per year. That's our Paddlers Cup Festival. That's a series of races over one weekend in April. We also do small fundraising, and those are things like our merchandise, our t-shirt sales. We do each year the kids that make the Team USA squad give a private lesson. They come down and they give a private lesson. Whoever shows up, they can donate however much they want, and they can go paddle in a K2 or a C2 with the Team USA athlete, get their picture taken. It's super cool for the 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds on the team to be able to come down and paddle with a national team member. How do we spend it? We have payrolls. About 75% of our money goes towards our coaches. We have fixed costs, like our gas, rent, insurance, taxes, bookkeeping, and then we have equipment we have to replace. And then we use our fundraising to pay for new equipment.
Time to move on.
I'm sorry?
Continue, Aaron, continue.
Okay, all right. Best practice. So what I always tell people is ongoing monthly operational expenses should be paid for by operational income. So do not set your club up in a situation where you need to fundraise just to keep the lights on. You should be able to keep the lights on with the money that you get every month from your members. Okay, next. Annual operating budget. Yep. So we create a budget every September. I think I reviewed this already. What time is it? I feel like I'm cutting into Mike's time here. Rock, how are we doing?
Well, we extended the session to 90 minutes minimum, so you're okay. Yeah.
Oh, so I can slow way down then. Okay, all right.
The question is if the audience will have the patience to stay on.
Oh, okay, all right. So I can slow down, but I have to be more interesting. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, we are almost done with you anyway. So continue. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. How do we create a budget? We do it every September. Basically, we just check to see how many members we think we're going to have. Then we divide that number up by our projected expenses. It's getting pretty easy because we run the same program year to year, and so we get it pretty quick. I always include in my budget projection a 3%, a 5%, and a 7% overrun in our expenses, and then I aim our budget for a 7% overrun. So even if I totally messed up, we are almost always covered, and we don't have to go into that rainy day fund. We monitor the actuals at every single monthly board meeting and to make sure we're on track. Next. Here's an example budget. So over on the left, our income, very quickly, income comes from all those groups. It's a basic spreadsheet here. So that's how much money we brought in. This is an example budget from a few years ago. The numbers are, I think I changed them a little bit. So subtotal income was right around 100,000. Then we had our expenses. You'll see our expenses are basically personnel, administrative things like taxes and postage and team events and websites. And then the facility equipment takes up some cash, and then fixed asset purchases are huge. And so you can see here in this year, I did 3%, 5%, and 10%. And you can see that when I added us all up, I was within at 5%, I was still showing a very, very small budget surplus there. Okay, next. Fundraising. We found the most successful fundraising possible when you really focus it up front and keep the goal right up front, so that every potential donor and every parent, every member, every stakeholder can see it. So usually what we choose are chase boats, which we use. Those are the safety boats that our coaches coach from and provide safety with. Our team boats, which are our 2- and 4-person boats that have to be provided by the team, and then development boats, which help us basically teach kids who are brand new to the team. And we always make a very good point of it. Last year, for example, our main thrust was smaller sized team boats to fit our female athletes. And we really mentioned that these athletes should not have to paddle the same size boat that the men are using. I mean, in some cases it was like this girl would be in like a boat the size of a bathtub and would not be able to paddle at all. So that was a big deal. It was about gender equity, and that really resonated, and we were able to fundraise pretty well. Next. Boards and committees. Okay, so the board. This is a really, really tricky thing. You want your board member to have your ideal board member to have a certain outlook. Okay. Unfortunately, board members in organizations like mine are mostly made up of parents who have been with the team for a long time. Usually that means that those are parents of older athletes who have performance in mind, who have competition in mind. Sometimes that can lead to an undesirable bias on the agenda of the board. In other words, they might be thinking, well, I want to hire the super special coach and devote the money towards that so that my son or daughter can kick butt. You need people who are going to be really long-term minded. Where's the club going to be in 3, 5, and 10 years? And you need to have a process for choosing board members that's transparent. And then you need to realize that not everyone is going to make a good board member. And that's okay. It's not a job that everyone is going to be good at. The main thing I like to think of is the board is going to handle the parent volunteers and is going to handle the dry side of the operations. So fundraising, money, long-term stuff. They handle the scholarship applications. They handle all that stuff so that the coaches are not in the position of having to do those kinds of things. Okay. We have parent volunteer committees that actually do a lot of the hands-on work that gets done. So we have a regatta committee that plans our regattas and makes sure that we have all the stuff we need, from competitive numbers to jerseys to all that stuff. We have an equipment and maintenance committee that handles the maintenance on all of our equipment. We have an admin, and then we have a fundraising, marketing, and then we have events like the holiday party, that kind of stuff. And every parent is expected to be on one of those committees. So if they don't sign up for one at the beginning of the season, we just assign them. All right. It's important that the coaches handle the wet side operations, that they handle the day-to-day operations on what happens with the club. The coaches are in the best position to do that. And sometimes there can be this strange overlap, and you really want to make sure that instructors are doing instructing, board members are doing boarding. Okay. I will end that little spiel with, I have a great board. So if they're watching now, I want them to know I appreciate them very much. Okay. We use a bunch of different tools to help manage our club. So you've heard that I said you should use an automated website to do your billing and your membership. There's so many out there. We use one called Team Unify, but there are dozens of ones you can use for a small fee that more than makes up for itself. There are tools like Beyond the Whiteboard. That's one we use that keeps track of everyone's workout performances. They can log their performance right on their phone. Coaches can then see what they did. It creates leaderboards. You can see here an example of some of those things. And then we use another one called Coach's Eye, which allows us to take video, and then just like John Madden, we can draw on there and show them what we want them to do differently and better. And then we can send that video to them, or we can post it to YouTube, etc. So those are some of the tools we use. Next. I think I just talked about this, a suitable online platform. You want the online registration. It's not just about collecting the money. It's the fact that those members are entering all their own information themselves. So since it's based around the user, the administrator doesn't have to do all the little nitty-gritty stuff. They register themselves. It does all of our agreements. We have a media use waiver. We have a medical waiver. We have a redundant ACA waiver. We have all that stuff so that it all gets signed. We also have a code of conduct and a sportsmanship agreement, all of that stuff. It saves all their info, all their contact info, and then we're able to communicate that with them either by posting on the website, using a calendar that's on the website, or I can email anyone from the website or large groups of them. It also does all of our event registration. It will charge them for the event. It sets deadlines. I can see which athletes have signed up. It's awesome. And you want to be able to have a platform that's going to work for all those functions. Next. Okay, financials. So online platform, so it just deposits to our account. The cost, it charges a percentage of the fee. It's done through credit card. So there's always going to be a percentage cost there. And this one is about 3%. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, 3%, that's $100,000 budget. That's $3,000. That's true. But if you start collecting checks and having them rolling around your glove box, I'll say right now, you're going to lose money, and you're not going to be able to keep track of who's done what. So the 3% we view as just a fee that's just the cost of doing business. It tracks who gets charged and when. We can do a refund if we want. Be careful on huge amounts of refunds because it charges another 3% going back. So you got to be careful there. Other useful stuff, it keeps track of all of our ACA numbers, which is hard to sometimes get a hold of. It does Safe Sport certification tracking, and then there's a mobile app that the coaches can use. Next. So, in summary, look, club structure and foundational principles matter. Find what's important to you about this, and then build the structure around that. In my experience, kids have to have fun, and they have to struggle to achieve. Membership and recruitment and group progression, if it's well thought out, it's going to go well for you. You need reasonably good budgeting and fundraising. You need a solid, committed board with a structure of who does what, when, and then you want to leverage as much as possible those online tools. You do not want your coaches and instructors, who are normally enthusiastic, awesome people, to be bogged down with trying to make sure everyone's signed up, or trying to make sure that the bank account actually gets the money that they were given that one time after practice on a Tuesday. So those are some of my summary thoughts, and I think that's it. I think finally, Mike, sorry about that, bud.
Next slide. Folks, my name is Mike Schillinger, and I'm a club boater. Okay. I don't do this for anything other than the love of the Tennessee Valley Canoe Club down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So on behalf of them and the folks that are listening tonight, thanks for listening to me and seeing me for a few minutes here. Who we are. I'm a swiftwater rescue instructor. I'm not an instructor trainer. I'm just a guy in my club that realized we need a good training program when I first joined and put one together because we didn't have one. We didn't have a lot of things. My club started in 1967. It's been around over 50 years. A lot of what we have done as a club was institutional tribal knowledge for years. What's happened over the last 10 or 12 years that I've been on the board is we've actually formalized those processes and put them in writing so that there is some legacy going on, as Aaron mentioned, because you don't want one guy to go away and half the functions of your organization collapse. And that's what we see out there in a lot of organizations. So my bunch has formalized and put in SOP how we do things. So we have a playbook for a lot of the things we do. We're all volunteers. None of us are taking a dime for what we do. Even our instructors, they're doing that out of the love for their organization. We're mostly a whitewater club. We have a flat water organization that's growing. And I can tell you, because of COVID, the rec boaters, or at least that's what we call them, the guys that are out buying boats at Walmart, that population has exploded. And we're doing our best to get our arms around it, but we're far from a really good handle on that yet, but we're working it. As of today, we got about 800 members. We've been as high as 12 to 1,400. COVID put a bite in our population of membership, but we'll get that back in the next couple of years. It's just a cyclical thing. In 2007, we had exactly 0 ACA instructors in this club, 0. And now we have about 40. We got 4 more folks whitewater kayak certified at the L3, L4 level about a month ago. And we've got 1 more open boater, and we'll have 3 more swiftwater guys probably in the April, May timeframe next year. So we're always floating right about 40 certified, current and qualified instructors in the club. I'd like to grow that, but that's a function of time, especially as most of you that I saw on the demographics in volunteer organizations with the time that you have to put into this, because most of us are working for a living, doing another job, trying to pay the mortgage. We've been recognized before. In 2017, we got the Stroke of Achievement Award from ACA for our training program, which at the time wasn't clear to me, but it is now. That training program drives everything we do as a club. It drives our calendar, it drives our funding, it drives our personnel that we put and the talent that we resource and invest in. And it's served us well. It was done long ago by some very wise folks, but it wasn't really written down anywhere. Now it is. We have a training program that looks like Groundhog Day every year, but it drives everything we do, and it really drives us to success. Such that in 2020 with COVID, it slowed us down, folks, but it really never brought us to our knees. We were out of business for about 3 weeks because the Forest Service shut everybody down in our local area here, but we're back. Now, there's lessons learned with that, so let's go to the next slide. So for about 40 years, everything was trundling along just fine. About 2007, when I joined the club, we were struggling to do the day-to-day business of just being an organization. Because again, nothing had really been ever written down. There were some basic bylaws, there were some basic things that the club was doing, but it was all driven around personality and people without anything documented. And about 2008, we got some very wise folks that jumped in, realized that was not sustainable for the future. And I was part of that. I didn't lead it, but I certainly saw what that individual was trying to do. And with that, over the next 5 to 6 to 7 years, we grew the organization from, frankly, working day to day to getting out in front of things. Now we have a 5-year, 6-year, 10-year plan. And that's where you need to be. But it doesn't happen overnight. This club went from 150 people that we thought we had on the books in 2007 as members to I think our height was 2018 when we were at 12 or 1400. So I watched this club, and more importantly, our board had to deal with exponential growth over a very short period of time and figure out how to do this on our own. I went to my first ACA conference about 2012, looking for those Jedi Knights out there that could tell me and all those great things clubs do, and I could steal all their good ideas and bring them back to Chattanooga. And what I really found was we were doing all the things that people were telling me they were doing, but we just had to turn it up a notch. And so I came back from that, reported to our board, and we took it upon ourselves to, as a volunteer organization, to kind of professionalize each of our board positions and formalize the procedures in the club so we could sustain it over time. Next slide. We're a nonprofit. Our board positions are by function, not by individual. So of course we've got a president and we've got the rest of the stuff that you would normally have in a board of directors, but we have a couple other unique ones that I think are unique to us that maybe you ought to look at, and we'll show them in a minute. Of course, we're using Robert's Rules of Order to formalize board functions for changes to our operating strategies, including our bylaws and those sorts of things. But we can make decisions fairly quickly because we've adopted a vote by email policy as well. Tools, as Aaron talked about, and I'm going to harp on it too, you got to automate everything you can, guys. We're using Zoom right now because we can't meet as a board physically in a room. There's an outdoor organization here in Chattanooga called Outdoor Chattanooga that focuses on citywide outdoor activities, and they've always let us use their conference room. Love them to death, but we can't meet there right now. So as a group, we're using Zoom just like we're doing here tonight. Google Drive, we're sharing files back and forth. So we're not emailing stuff back and forth to each other anymore. We've gotten much smarter about that. As Aaron mentioned, membership management is a big deal now, especially when you get beyond about 300 folks. When you get to 300, 350, 400, you can't manage with Excel spreadsheets anymore, guys. It doesn't work. Your secretary, your treasurer, the rest of your board, your membership guys, they cannot keep up when you're trying to hand jam on Excel. So you got to go to something automated. We just transferred over to QuickBooks this year. That was a major muscle move for us this year. We were using some homegrown stuff before that. Now with QuickBooks, our treasurers can do a knowledge transfer to the next guy without a lot of pain, because QuickBooks is what it is. And it's a set program that isn't personality driven. It's all there. And if you get it set up to your financial transactions on QuickBooks or a similar platform, it makes it a lot easier for your board members to do their business of running the club. The same with online payments. As Aaron said, we're using a program called AffiniPay. You know, there's PayPal, there's all those things out there. You just have to pick one that works for y'all. I think AffiniPay, in our case, we found to be a little bit cheaper per transaction. And so we're still using it. And this can be embedded in a lot of other applications for online membership. So it's a wedge that can go into your membership payment up front. And that's how we're doing it. The same with waivers. When that new member goes to our website after he's been directed there, he can join the club, he can pay online, he can give us a little bit of a member profile, he can sign his annual club waiver. And then for specific events, we're also using Smart Waiver for ACA events. We're working that with the folks in Fredericksburg, and that's worked fairly well. So we're down in our club to 2 waivers that we're using to operate during the year. And of course, we've got our local checking and banking accounts. I'll tell you though, the training strategy that we use in the club drives everything. Next slide, please. Revenue. As Aaron said, you got to have some money coming in. We use a little bit different model. I think a lot of folks do. Our membership fee is $20. That's it per family. As your membership grows, I would tell you, resources don't become a problem. They really don't. Those first couple of years, I can remember high-fiving with our treasurer when we had $1,400 left in the bank account at the end of the year. Those days are long gone. We're managing a lot of money, and that's a good thing because that gives us resources to do things like pay for scholarships for our ACA instructors. We have a selection process every year. We'll take out of our population of candidates, 6 or 7 folks, select them in an actual formal selection process and pay for their tuition to go to ACA instructor. And that pays huge benefits for the club and your training over the course of a generation, not just a year or two. When we do fundraising, it's with the focus on specific targeted beneficiaries. So the slide down there's got a picture of a trailer we bought our guys at Team River Runner a couple years ago. These helmets that you see in the center, we just did here in 2020. Those, our local rangers patrol our rivers, and now with more rec boaters on the rivers than ever before, it's been a real challenge for them. And they had these really pink looking lousy helmets, and they were kind of embarrassed to wear them. So we got them some cool guy stuff here this year, and we spent $1,000 doing it. So the club donated to make that happen for our local Tennessee State Parks guys for the Hiwassee and the Ocoee rivers. Next slide. Here's the way our board is organized right now. And you can see all the boilerplate stuff that you normally have on a board. But we have a communications officer. We have a training officer. The communications officer is specifically there to target the message from our club to our membership population and to the public. It's not a webmaster position. It's somebody that's focusing on making sure our board and our organization is speaking with one voice. Secondly, we have a training officer. Carla's job is to track our ACA funded and paid for and tracked instructor population. So she's running a database on Johnny and Susie who attended ACA instructor training at whatever level, and if their CPR first aid certification is out of tolerance, she's banging on their emails going, hey, you need to get to a class, or hey, it's time for you to update. So we have a guy or a gal specifically focused on managing that population of guys so they don't slip through your fingers. We also have a quartermaster. Our quartermaster down there is a committee position, and that person manages our equipment. Our equipment we keep stored in a storage facility. All the rescue ropes, the PFDs, the rescue PFDs, our rescue mannequins, tables, chairs, cots, all that stuff we use to put on events, tents, dinnerware, all that crap is stored in a facility. And Scott goes in twice a year to inventory, look over and assess what we have going into the next year to see if there's anything else we need to buy or replace. Having said all that, the big question I get is, okay, how do you get folks onto the board? Well, success breeds success. We've, over the last couple of years, brought in some really quality folks that have been inspired by the training that they've seen put on. If you put on good training, you'll get the leaders. If you put on good training, you will get the leaders. They're inspired. They'll come up to you and say, hey, how can I help? And I'll ask them, well, I don't know. How can you help? What's your background? Well, I'm an IT person. Well, gee, we got an opening in the webmaster position. The guy just retired and he's taking a 6-month hiatus. Can you jump in and help? With that, you get that guy to sit down with the primary that's already in the chair, and we used to call in my past life, you right seat ride with that. I would never put a brand new board member into a primary position if I can avoid to do that. Let them see what right looks like for a year before you just thrust them into the job. Because when you do that, they get overwhelmed, especially if there's not a lot of formal playbook or cookbook procedures on how to perform that job, and they get overwhelmed and they run away. And so over time, if you grow your board properly, you can have a primary and a secondary in each position. And over a couple of years, you get some really solid boards. You really do. But you got to show them what right looks like. You got to make them plan things. Facebook is not a planning tool. You got to write things down and put it in a document with a timeline, so they know what we're doing and when we're executing it. Because we don't do this every day. This isn't our primary job. So we have to have it documented. So we've got that cookbook we can open from last year and see how it's done again. And I'll tell you, just being the last president, if I had a young person that came to me with an idea, I always empowered them to make a decision to execute. I always tried to resource it if I could. Why? Because as a volunteer organization, I cannot afford to turn away good ideas wherever they come from. So you've got to reinforce that and know, and people will then be engaged and take ownership in it. And the last thing, and I tried to do this last year, COVID kind of turned us sideways a little bit on this one, is continuity books. I walked into the board last year and gave every one of them a book with the bylaws, the job description, and what they were supposed to do, and all the documentation with the calendar, the budget, and all that laid out. So they didn't have to hunt it down. And then we put it all on the Google Drive into their individual folders. But having continuity from one generation to the next really matters. Next slide. So our training cycle is a series of events. And all that stuff in yellow there is just telling you our gun really fires for our seasons of training in late May, early June with our paddle school, which is about 180, 190 student event. So it's 300 or 400 people after support boaters and trip leaders and all the stuff that goes into putting on a big weekend. That's a 1 weekend drill, a couple of days. We show all the newbies what right looks like, get them out with somebody that's got a lot of experience on the water, and they spend a weekend seeing what right looks like. And then we're very blessed here in East Tennessee. We've got every kind of river you can think of. We've got flat water, we've got moving water, we have intermediate whitewater, we've got advanced whitewater. So we can train a season all within about 2 hours of our local area here. We're very lucky, and I know that. We're very, very lucky, and that doesn't exist in a lot of places. But you can see what we do. We have Hiwassee trips, which is our local class 1 river. And then towards the end of this, after our paddle school, we'll spend 4 or 5 weekends on Hiwassee trips, and then we'll step it up a little bit. And then we'll do something called Rescue Rodeo, which is really a level 2, level 3 river rescue skills course. It's just buddy rescue skills stuff that you would teach on the river to anyone. We do that midsummer so that these folks can get a little context to what they're doing before we throw them out there and start throwing ropes at them and all that. They understand how to grab a rope because we teach it to them at paddle school, but by now they've had a few out of boat experiences. So Rescue Rodeo at the end of July, early August tends to give them a little more context than just throwing at them right away. So we purposefully put that towards midsummer. And then there are some other things we do on the Pigeon and the Ocoee if we have those students that are ready to step up there. And that's really the purpose of the next slide, please. Our culture that we've tried to inculcate in our organization is you know, challenge by choice is the term we use in ACA for a lot of stuff, but we're also trying to inculcate these qualities and these skills into the students over maybe a 2 or 3 year period. Sometimes this process is very accelerated depending on the skill of the student, but it doesn't have to be accelerated. So with that aside, I just tell you, this has been very, very successful for us to take a newbie that, you know, that you can see down at the bottom, he's asking what's an Eddie. Maybe the second season or when he's in his stepping up process, he's being told what he really needs to work on. And then when he's a valued member of a paddling group, he can self-assess and know, yeah, I really need to work on my strokes a little bit because I'm worn out at the end of the day when I really shouldn't be. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do as an organization. Next slide. Let's talk about COVID. I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to do this last year as president. To be honest with you, what I was able to do with the team, an incredible team on the board, was get the club back on the river fairly quickly after the Forest Service shut everybody down here in East Tennessee. They shut down the Hiwassee, they shut down the Ocoee, and we got treated just like an outfitter on paper. So we had to go back and write a Mother May I request to the Forest Service, how TVCC was going to mitigate, how we were going to do our best to keep people from not getting sick and still perform on the river as a club. Of course, everybody was going to the river as a private boater, but as a club to do training trips and to do formal activities as a club, we got shut down on 3 April. We didn't really get back on the river. Well, we got back on the river fairly quickly after the Forest Service opened up the window, but we lost our major training event for a year. We lost paddle school, couldn't execute it. The schedule just didn't permit it. There were too many other things in the way for the rest of the summer. So we just didn't do it. And we were mandated that we couldn't. So when the Forest Service said, okay, clubs, outfitters, submit your requests, submit your plans, we did, and we were approved in about 72 hours. So I want to put a shout out to Scott Fisher from NOLI. He really helped us. He helped us get a straw man document that was put together. And our current president, Darren Caputo, he's the hero. He got it done and got it put out there. And we were approved. We submitted on a Friday night and we were approved Monday morning. But we lost our paddle school. And the thing I want to tell all the clubs out there is you got to look at your training program. We just said, okay, guns fired. We lost paddle school. This weekend is supposed to be a Hiwassee trip. Let's go. And the mistake was we didn't think through the population of boaters that were so desperate to get on the water that what we didn't realize was going to happen is folks, and I think Janet Cowie said it very well last night during one of the other sessions, people this summer were more dedicated, were more tuned in to trying to get on the water because there was nothing else in their life they could do. This was a big deal to them, was to go out and paddle with TVCC. So guys were with no experience, with no equipment and no idea what they were getting into, were signing up for Class 2 and Class 3 whitewater trips. And so only because of our institutional checklists that has a leader calling those students a couple of days prior to the event, did we realize that we had complete utter novices signing up for trips that they had no business being on. So we had to go back and kind of retool that. And I think the lesson learned from us is you got to look at your training program. You just can't shotgun start like we tried to do, because we had to go back and retool it a little bit. Next slide. So what I would hope you'd take away from this, try to automate as much as you can. It makes your life a lot simpler. Your membership cycle really doesn't matter anymore when you automate your online membership, because those systems give you a report that says, hey, you got X numbers of members that you need to go and get renewed. And it will poke them in the eyeball electronically and send them a note and say, hey, your membership to TVCC is in arrears. Can you take care of that? And then, of course, you can go to the website and here's the link and away you go. I would tell you, as one of the leaders in the club, I was hell-bent on doing every event we could within the constraints of our state and the USDA guidelines and regulations that we were going to follow. We followed CDC guidance, we followed state guidance, TVA had a set of guidance for our local rivers here. We followed all of that. And we still managed to pull off a training season that, in my opinion, albeit smaller, was just as good as anything else we've done. And the reason I say execute what you can as much as you can, because if you don't do that, your membership population is going to go to sleep on you and go away. And you got to keep tickling them with activity. A club that does nothing has nobody. I'm not a computer smart guy. I used to be, but it's all kind of gotten away from me. I'm an old Army Signal Corps officer and background of paratrooper and all that stuff. But, you know, these millennials, this younger generation are 10 times more computer smart than I will ever be. And I had to relearn how to do business watching millennials change the club. And I hope you have the same experience I have. I am very, very optimistic about the future because they know how to do things that are a lot smarter than I do. And listen to them. They know what they're talking about. May not have the life experience or the business experience to run the back office, which is on my slide here. I have some older folks doing some of that back office stuff that have run businesses before. So they know how to run a spreadsheet. They know how to do some of these things that maybe a young person just starting out doesn't know how to do. But that's where your young, fresh ideas come from, not old guys like me. I reinforce success no matter where I saw it. If I saw something good happening, we went for it. We put resources to it. There's nothing worse for a volunteer to have this great idea to get shot down at a board meeting because of some very unimaginative thoughts from old guys like me. So I was very tuned into that. If somebody brought me a good idea to the board, I put it on the agenda. I always put it on the agenda as best I could. The other thing I tell you is, as a leader, I'm not afraid anymore. I used to be afraid to go ask the membership for help, money, resources. I'm not anymore. We instituted for one of our events we do called Rescue Rodeo, we instituted a $50, as a $25 registration fee that was refundable. So they had some skin in the game. So you couldn't just sign up and we buy hot dogs and hamburgers for all these 50 people, and then 20 of them would bail the morning of. So we put a $25 registration fee on it. And if you show up, you're going to get that automatically refunded back to you. 100% attendance at all these events, 100%. So once you do that, but I mention that because at the end of the training, which is really world-class stuff, I've got 10 Swiftwater instructors that have all been put through Sam Fowlkes' course. So they know what they're talking about. They know how to teach, and they do it very well. And when those folks inspire those students just ended up donating the money to the club. They said, oh, just keep it. That training was so world-class. I don't want my money back. Just keep it. And that was just a bright idea. And that funded the club for the whole summer. So in the end, our resources really didn't deplete at all this year because of our automated processes, because we inspired a lot of folks. And I tell you, if you have the opportunity to automate as much as you can, and if you're at that point, I'd love to talk to you offline more. I know we're running out of time on how to grow smartly, because that's one piece. I think we did pretty well, but it was the Braille method because there wasn't anybody around to really show us how to do that. Next slide. That's all I have. I appreciate your time, and I'll turn it back over to Rock for questions. Thank you.
So questions for Aaron and Mike, please. Unmute yourself if you're muted and don't be shy.
Maybe they can put them in comments, Rock. That's usually how I do it, but.
I was wondering what your recreational training program looks like, the flat water. Are we in?
Was that for me?
Yes, Mike, I think that was for you.
Yes, sir. I'm not, Wayne, did you ask that?
No, I haven't asked a question yet.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm not sure who I'm talking to.
That was me, Louise.
Louise, hi. Our flat water training is broken into two pieces right now. We have a flat water group that's it's a compilation of the Sea Kayak group. You know, we're in East Tennessee, so we have the Tennessee River right here. So we have it's not all just whitewater. We have a lot of lakes and the Tennessee River and a lot of large bodies of water. So we have sea kayakers here, as well as our rec boat folks that are out there in those wilderness systems, 12 footers. So those folks are paddling together as a group right now. I've got one coastal guy certified, and I just got two summers ago, two folks that are L2 river kayaking certified. And so we've glommed those two groups together to give them some population that they can train together with. So there's really two different groups inside there. There are some canoeists as well, some flat water canoeists. They have kind of broken themselves into the overnighter group so that they can take the big canoes on some of the local creeks and rivers and do that piece of it. So training in that area isn't as formalized as it is on the whitewater side, but they're still doing training. The piece that was really, that we were trying to really break into this summer was our true rec boat populations for those guys and gals that were out there all over the place buying boats, whether it was a Tractor Supply or Walmart or wherever. I can tell you our state directors and I agonized about this because the whitewater clubs and our local recreational clubs weren't what you were reading about in the paper. What you were reading about in the paper with all the incidents were these poor rec boaters that had zero training and zero idea of what could go wrong on the river. And we saw it firsthand. And I'll tell you who really dealt with it here in Tennessee was our state park rangers. They're walking around with bags under their eyes, 40 or 50 rescues a weekend. Guys getting stuck on trees and tubes. I mean, it's just, it was a really interesting summer and not in a real good way. So we were really trying to target that population this summer. And frankly, COVID really slowed us down in that regard. So I'm hoping in 2021, we will be able to, and our state directors got a plan now to integrate, to get a couple of clubs really tied together for the rec boaters because they really need it. We got this whitewater thing. We can train that all day long. But the rec boater piece is where we're really struggling trying to get a program going.
It actually brings me to my question. I was wondering, what does the ACA do to support a rec club? Like the Paddle KC Club, they're just mainly focused on that recreational for fun paddling.
I know it's up and coming. I know there are some resources now that didn't exist. I'm going to have to defer to my state director, Andrea, because I know she's working with the folks at National on that. There are some classes now. There are some things either in draft, but it's on the radar. Now, how far down the SCIC path some of the curriculum are for that, I can't tell you right now. Maybe Andrea can.
Yeah, Mike, I'm happy to speak if you want me to.
Please, because I don't know that piece of it enough yet.
Sure. Guys, this is Andrea White. I'm the state director for Tennessee, and Mike and I work very closely together. He's one of my heroes for what he puts in place in his club. But at my home club at the Tennessee Scenic Rivers Association in Middle Tennessee, for about an hour and a half to 2 hours around Nashville, all we've got is lakes and Class 1 rivers. So we have been inundated with the rec boater population, and this has been a 5-year odyssey for our club. We have built a program that did not particularly survive COVID very well this year. We don't have the COVID success story that Mike has in East Tennessee on the Whitewater side. But prior to that, we had a very successful training program going where we would start with an intro to paddling on a flat water. That's just an L1 flat water class. We did an intro to rivers, the intro to moving water, which was L2 skills for river kayaking that we would do on a Class 1 river. And we augmented that. I think what makes us unusual is we augmented that with a training program for rescue skills. Typically, it's only when you get into more advanced paddling that you separate your paddling skills and your rescue skills. We actually had classes on both tracks for entry-level boaters for the last 5 years in Nashville. And we teach those L1 and L2 rescue skills as part of, we had 2 one-day classes, one for lake paddlers and one for river paddlers. It's very similar. I mean, it's the same drills and skills that you learn in the more advanced classes. We've just dialed them back to the L1, L2 hazards. And it's been very, very successful. The first couple of years we taught them, they sold out and we had to add extra classes. We start getting into some of the normal club cycle of leadership things and things wax and wane, but it's been a very successful program. And this year we actually worked with the clubs across the state. Scott Fisher, who Mike referenced up at Nolichucky Outdoor Learning Institute, got certified as a rescue IT. And we've now got an initiative in place to try to certify more rescue instructors at an L2 and an L3 level, specifically to teach boaters on Class 1 and Class 2 water, not the more advanced whitewater boaters.
But Andrea, I'll jump in here. Is there not a ACA curricula for at least 2 of those courses now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No,
I thought there was.
And everything we're teaching is ACA teaching. We're using ACA certified instructors and we're teaching what we've been taught. It just hadn't really ever been flushed out for those entry-level boaters. And specifically, like the deep water reentry tools that the coastal kayakers, the touring boaters use, it's a little different on rec boats. You've got to adapt some of those techniques for the way that the boats are designed. And you've got to sometimes reach deeper in the toolbox when you're dealing with older paddlers who may be heavier or have joint replacements or muscular issues in different ways. So you can't just know 1 or 2 ways to get back in your boat. You've got to be able to teach 5 or 6. But we take things from some of the coastal curriculum, and then we take things from the swiftwater rescue curriculum. The most valuable thing has been the strainer bar drill. I know that drill is taught different ways in different places, but one of the ways that our swiftwater rescue team teaches it, the first time you go through, we kind of use it as an opportunity to put someone in a dynamic river scenario where they're in controlled conditions and surrounded by rescue instructors, and say, okay, your goal is to get over the top. Can you figure out how to do it? And about half of them don't. And for a lot of boaters who haven't had an out-of-boat experience and have been doing just calm waterways, this is the first time they've experienced the dynamic river scenario out of boat. And what happens is they come away from that drill saying, oh, now I understand why I need to wear a life jacket.
Yeah.
And it's like mind-blowing how quickly all their prejudices change. So it's been a very successful program. I'm looking forward to kicking it back in. We got 6 new L2, L3 rescue instructors certified this summer. So we really kind of used COVID year to build the infrastructure so we can relaunch next year.
Thank
So
you,
we got to
Andrea.
move on. Rock, what
Thank
else
you.
you got for us?
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Let's move on to Kelly. I think Kelly is asking, has a hand up.
Yes.
Kelly, can
you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I am brand new. I'm not even ACA certified as of yet. I live right on Lake Erie in Toledo, Ohio. I am a new Coast Guard Auxiliary member. And the reason I got into the ACA, or am going to hopefully take classes and become certified, is because a friend of mine who's in the ACA and the Coast Guard Auxiliary teaches classes, and she's going to need somebody else to help her. Now, we deal with the wreck boats and, you know, sea kayaking or coastal kayaking because of being in Lake Erie. Do you have any recommendations on who I could speak with to ask them questions and kind of pick their brain about what needs to be done where with the Coast Guard Auxiliary and the ACA curriculum? Right now, what they're doing is they're teaching the classroom part with Coast Guard Auxiliary information.
So
then, because the Coast Guard can't teach on water.
Right. Now,
they have to have the ACA.
Here's the good news. Our current director of the board at ACA, Robin Pope, works specifically with the Coast Guard on a whole bunch of issues. Okay. So he could probably write a book about all this for us. Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is I think we're already engaged, and it's just a question of plugging you into what's already part of the discussion.
Right, and I know that there are other flotillas around that have an established paddle sport division. Our flotilla in this area does not. So I'm going to be thrown in this position where I'm brand new ACA eventually and brand new Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I don't have a background in either one, so I'm kind of just grasping at straws and trying to figure out who would be the best person to speak with.
Well, first of all, welcome to the fight. Secondly, I would tell you, you've plugged into the right group of people. So after this discussion, I'm sure Rock's going to send some kind of contact list out here or something.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can reach out and get you tied.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Kelly, what I would recommend you do is just send a message to ACA at americancanoe.org, and we'll figure out how to route that message further.
Thank you so much.
And Robin is right there too. So
okay.
My email address is robinpope3@hotmail.com. If you'll shoot me an email, I can send you a bunch of information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. Yep. Next person up is Christy. Christy, can you unmute yourself? Christy, your hand is up. Do you want to unmute?
Yep. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
All righty, excellent. Well, I am not sure if my question is going to be relevant. What I'm gathering here is, well, first let me explain. We are a paddling club here in Kansas City, and we've been around since 2015. We have over 90 events a year. We are extremely active. We are mostly, though, recreational paddlers, and there's a big range there. We try and bring in the people who are just buying the new entry-level boats and help lift them up and teach them along the way and just have fun. Most of our people are just paddlers. They get out and paddle, 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 paddle. But we are not a competitive group. We're not, we have, well, I did, you know, get my 3rd place medal in a race recently, but we're not a competing group. We are not a bunch of trainers. We brought in some trainers from out of town, but we don't have any trainers in our group. We are just trying to build community among people who paddle. And that may be 12 miles in your sea kayak. That may be hanging out and, you know, doing whatever in your little 10-foot wreck boat. It may be whitewater on the Mulberry or wherever, the Buffalo, whatever. It may be Maine. We've done Maine, the Great Lakes, all that. So we do a variety of paddling, but we are not training focused and we're not competition focused. So we are struggling to try and figure out where we fit in the ACA and exactly how we can work with the ACA to build the paddle sport community here in Kansas City and share better information on safety and paddling skills. We want trainers to come in and train people, but I just don't know because I have family commitments, and things, and I just don't know that I'm able to do the paddling certification right now.
Well, I would tell you,
what do you do?
So, yeah, that's not an unusual story, ma'am. I can tell you,
that is the biggest. I think that's the biggest market in the paddling end.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. But so where is the ACA in that?
All right, so the ACA's got some educational programs, but there's another piece to this too.
And also, I'm not sure why, but I can't start my video. My video has been turned off.
Well, we see your picture. That's a great looking hat.
Right, but I'm not sure why I can't turn on my video. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, and actually, let's see, that hat. What the cool thing is on that hat is that I crewed for the winners, Jeremy Bohr and Steve Landick in the MR 340. Not this. Let's see, last November when they did it in brutal, icy conditions. So that was my get up for that. So that's why I still have that. So we're talking about recreational groups who are just the standard paddlers.
Right, right. They're all
You're having fun,
and it's a great thing.
And we are training. We're doing rescue practice and stuff. And I'm bringing in trainers. Last year was tough, but we're training. It's just that I don't know.
That's all my bunch could do for 30 years. We had, like I said, we had 0 instructors before 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. We didn't have anybody. Not even me. So
Christy, let me ask you something. So if we were to work, for instance, with Mike's club and codify some of the things that they have implemented over time and write those kinds of ideas into, I don't know, manuals or instructions or whatever, would that help clubs that are like yours?
I think so. A couple of the big challenges that we have as a small group, it's hard to get people to commit long-term for volunteering. You know how that's always the case.
Hey, look, we're schlepping every weekend. My class 2-3 cruise master, he's pimping guys every weekend to try to get them out of the river, man. I mean, it's just hard. Everybody's busy. Everybody's, especially in the volunteer world, there's a million other things they could be doing. We've been successful because we've just inspired folks over time, but it doesn't happen overnight. It just doesn't. Right.
And the reason that I came tonight and last night was because I'm hoping that others in the ACA are similarly enthused about paddling and are enthused about building community around paddling, because I see so many benefits, especially now in this time of pandemic and just stressors and divisions and all that. There's so much good in paddling that I have to believe that there's some way to leverage what the ACA is all about, excellent information and safety practices. That's a big thing with us. And also diversity. We have minority hosts that want to get out there and show, hey, Black guys do paddle,
Yeah. We just had that discussion. We're struggling.
Exactly. Well, and he sat in on one of the meetings, but what I'm hoping is that maybe the ACA can come up with like a starter kit for
FAQs, right? Frequently asked questions.
Well, I went to my first conference thinking there was this thing called the PAC Council, and I kept looking for the room where the PAC Council was, and I asked a few people, and it didn't really exist, that conference. So, yeah, what you're asking about is, I think, what the PAC Council was supposed to be, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I think I'm going to get a tasking.
Well,
Mike
I'm
and
okay
I
with that.
Mike and I discussed this a couple
Yeah,
of days
yeah,
ago and figured out that the ACA of the past was a little bit of a vaporware, as I call it, in the high tech and
yeah.
the cloud, as some other people may call it. There are lots of ideas that exist or existed, but the execution was lacking. So I think what you're bringing up, I think it's important. I think we need to really figure out how to address it. And I think that what Mike is saying is that PAC council should exist and address those kind of things.
And also
Right?
what was cool, 2 years ago when we first joined, and I was all excited, there was.
Christy, I need to move on. I have other people hanging up.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much. Mike Reese, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, I just did. I just popped on because I am down in Southeast Virginia in Hampton Roads. I am a member of the auxiliary up in Hampton. The auxiliary is starting an OxPad program, and they're having a trouble getting it started is because it's getting people trained. They want level 1 and 2 training for all the OxPad people, and it's hard to get the people trained. But they do have an OxPad program.
Sir, what's an OxPad?
United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Paddling Program. And they want to start doing patrols in kayaks and do a lot of recreational boater safety. So what they're looking at is the requirement for training.
Your voice is fading. Can you, Mike, come closer to the mic?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Is
we
it
got
better? I have earbuds in.
We can hear you now, Mike.
All right. But what they're doing, they're requiring level 1, 2 ACA training. I am a coastal level 1, 2 instructor, and I did teach, start a program in sit-on-tops at the Naval Sailing Center on the naval base here. That ACA Coastal Quick Start program is an excellent program for recreational boaters to get them with strokes, safety. I like the idea of adding some of the rescue into that program to get them used to the fact that there are things you can do. I just wanted to let you guys know that there is something going at the Coast Guard auxiliary / ACA side. I wouldn't mind talking to Kelly. And I found that using the Quick Start program for the recreational boaters to get them started, and then they can graduate from that to the level 1, level 2, whatever discipline they're going to get into.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone on the call still have questions for either Aaron or Mike regarding the club management, club structure, management of volunteers, management of the boards, stuff like that?
Rock, this is Buck Meyer. I have a question for Aaron. Aaron, are you paying your coaches as employees or as independent contractors? But you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, fail. Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
First of all, thank you, Buck, for asking me a question. I was feeling a little bit left out, and the fame and fortune and all that just was not working out. So anyways, Buck, yeah. So the great question. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, as any club tax person will know. We pay ours as hourly employees, the hourly employees. We don't do independent contracting. That's partially because our insurance covers each one of them. Safe Sport covers each one of them. It's not that you can't do contract. It was 2 years ago, I actually asked the board to look into the option to make me an independent contractor because I felt that I might be able to get some tax benefit, retirement benefits, those kinds of things might be to my more advantageous as an independent contractor. That probably would be, but the amount of money we're talking about, if I haven't been clear already, the amount of money we're talking about is pretty small. So in the end, we decided to stay with hourly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions regarding the boards or structure, management, etc.?
I have a question for Aaron. Aaron, with your club, I noticed that they graduate up to having to own their own racing boat.
Yep.
Is there any club racing boats?
Yeah, so we provide all the team boats, like the twos, the K2s, C2s, C4s, and C2s.
Okay.
But everyone pretty much wants their own boat. They want the boat that just they paddle, because the settings are really important. When you're racing, those settings have to be like perfect. We spend hours adjusting those settings. So basically everyone buys their own boat. We do have, I will say this, when you have a large enough club, the lucky part is, and recreational clubs I'm sure experience this too, you'll always have someone graduating and selling their boat, so that kids aren't having to buy like brand new boats. That would be bad. But there's like a fleet of like 10 of these kayaks that just keep getting resold over and over for like $400.
Okay.
And that's great, because when they get bashed into the dock, the parents don't have to cry and I don't have to yell, and it's no problem. But yeah, there's a large used market. But yeah, there are some junkers laying around, but mostly it's they buy their own boat.
You mentioned Cape, my last question, Cape canoes. Tried to Google them. Are they a Hungarian boat or what are they?
Yeah,
okay.
They're Hungarian, spelled with K-A-P-E. And in fact, I think it's in Hungary. I could be wrong, but I think it's pronounced Kape, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, we use those. Those are great beginner boats. They're made in mass production. For example, the canoes that we use are like $900 each, whereas a racing canoe is like $3,000.
Yeah.
So, and they're real stable. A kid of average ability is able to jump in that boat and balance it, which if you know anything about sprint canoeing, I mean, it's almost like you're teaching swimming for the first few months.
Yeah.
They're real unstable.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I paddle an NK, by the way.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yep.
All right. Any other question?
I do have one more quick question. So just for action items, I like to, oops, okay. There we go. I think I'm back. Well,
Your board meetings must run pretty well, ma'am, if you're taking action items.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's my whole thing. I got to have some plan to get things done. So for action items for a group that we're just paddlers, we're not trainers, other than bringing the training in, because we will be doing that if we can next year. But what can we be taking? What can we, as a registered Paddle America club, be making use of within the ACA to build our small paddling club now? What are the tools, the resources? Is there a Paddle America club contact, a mentor outside of the insurance department? Because that's different.
Okay, so you got the insurance thing, you're using the insurance, because that honestly, that is a huge piece for us.
Talk about the insurance, because that's totally separate. No, I'm talking about things that we can use to build, to promote and build our club and get the word out that we exist, even to connect, like people we're in Kansas City, so we're right on the border of Kansas and Missouri. People don't know we're here. So what can we?
So a couple suggestions.
Let Mike answer, please.
Couple suggestions. First of all, you need to get a hold of it's membership. I think the last time I saw this was in membership. Do you have any outfitters in your local area?
No.
Okay, is there anybody that sells boats anywhere?
There is REI, and I work with them somewhat, but they are not outside in the community. They cannot get out on the water with us.
They can't get out on the water, but they can advertise for you. And here's what they can do. There are these cards you can get. Do you have them?
I already work with the store, And they had, you know, for the last several years, they had been posting our information up, but with the changes in COVID and all, they no longer will post paper materials.
Okay.
So they're no longer doing that, and they've shut down. They're not doing any
Okay.
events, anything. I used to teach, you know, workshops for them and all.
How about your outdoor? All right.
But
Does
the ACA, what benefit should we be taking advantage of as a registered ACA Paddle America Club outside training and insurance?
Well, other than getting your name up on as an affiliated club, there's probably a couple things I don't know about that I haven't done, but I do know that they advertise clubs once in a while. Like I always see the Charleston Club that's up there as a featured organization. Talk to Robin, see if you can get you guys in there.
So,
Well, I just know that we.
So Christy, let Robin address this, please.
So
Thank
a couple
you.
things that you can use on the ACA resources, even if you're not bringing instructors in, there are a wide range of instructional resources on our instructional page. If you just click on the, pull it up. If you go to the website, go to education and then to resources, that'll get you a lot of information. If you're a Paddle America club, outside people can find you through that. All they need to do is search for a club and they can find that on the website. If you look at the website also, you can find out what's going on in the area in terms of stewardship. Merritt had a good presentation earlier today on stewardship activities, and that's a great way to get paddlers involved in water quality issues and making sure they have a safe place to paddle. So if you want to work with them, you can contact Brett through ACA's website. And that's going to help develop a community of paddlers, even if you don't want to take advantage of instructional activity.
Yeah, we're super active. We have cleanups on the lakes and the Missouri River, the Kaw River. We're plugged into different groups around town. We help with events. We paddle regularly. Sometimes we paddle 8-9 days in a row. But I'm trying to figure out, as a non-training and a non-competing group, what specific things in ACA we may be missing out on. Maybe we're not. Maybe they're.
The things that we are our insurance instruction, links to competition, and then links to stewardship activities. So, it sounds like you're taking advantage of those things and being involved with those things. What we'd like on the ACA side is to hear about that and to spread the word about what your club is doing to help inspire other people, build up the community in your area, and help build up the paddling community there.
I'm not sure how to do that. I know that, isn't there some way that a PAC is supposed to be able to like post a little bit,
So if you speak with Amy Ellis, the membership director, she would be the person to help you get stuff on our calendar, and that would also help advertise for your club.
Yeah, and Christy, you can also reach out to Kelsey Braswell at ACA, and she will also answer your questions. So let's move on. If there is, Christy, let's not take over the meeting. So let's ask maybe 2 more questions from other people, and if that's it, we will close down for today. So any other question?
Hello, I have one question, sir.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Okay, perfect. My name is Stanley. I'm from Costa Rica. Thank you for the great information you passed to us. We appreciate that, senor. My question is, I hear a lot about the clubs, and my question is, can be, for example, when we create a club in Costa Rica, is accepted by ACA? I don't know, maybe my question makes sense.
I don't think I understood completely. Can you rephrase your question, perhaps?
Perfect, sir. I try to go again. I'm from Costa Rica. That's why my English is not good.
That's all right.
Thank you. Thank you for the great information. I'm very interested about clubs, to create one club in Costa Rica, right? And my question is, the clubs is international accepted by ACA, or how that part works?
Yeah, we got clubs in Germany.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent.
So again,
I don't know much
Stanley,
about it, but I do know they're in Germany. There's a
So-
group in Germany, and I think there's one in Italy too, isn't there?
yeah. So if you reach out, I suggest you reach out to the to Kelsey or Amy at ACA. Just look up the contact information on the ACA website, and we'll try to connect you to the right information.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Any other question?
Brock,
We'll go ahead.
This is Debbie Page. I think when Aaron was talking about his club, he did not mention, I'm trying to talk and point. He did not mention the physical place of where all of this is taking place in Gig Harbor. And so I wondered, I mean, I don't think he didn't have anything there about boathouse or docks or any boat storage or anything, correct, Aaron?
Yeah. First of all, who let you on here is what I want to know. And you want the actual facility, or you want to chat about that? Is that what question?
Well, what I wanted to say is that I don't know if people thought, oh, gee, that's a lot of money. And when you consider that you could be charging twice as much if you had to pay a lot of money for your physical place, correct?
Right. Yeah, I should have pointed out, we are partnered with the city. So all our boats are on racks outside at a city park underneath an apple tree. So we don't have much in the way of facilities, which is kind of sad, but could be considered inspiring because it means that it can be done other places too. A lot of the places, most of the places in the United States, just for our other viewers, most of the places in the United States do not have a really nice boathouse or anything like that.
I don't know anybody in the volunteer world that does either. We don't.
Yeah.
We have a storage shed that keeps all of our PFDs locked up, but we don't have any.
I dream of like a post and beam with a big fireplace and a huge boathouse and a gym and a pool.
Well, I grew up in Washington, D.C. at Washington Canoe Club, literally in Washington Canoe Club. And we went from it at some point. I think our rent for the building was $5,000 or $6,000. Then all of a sudden they decided that it should be $100,000 or something ridiculous like that. So.
And then you went under the apple tree.
And so now, because the Park Service came in and said, oh, your building is unstable, everything is under apple trees.
That's right.
So.
All right. So this has been a very interesting conversation, to say the least. And I will really thank you, everyone, on behalf of ACA, and in particular, Aaron and Mike, for you two guys sharing wonderful stories about your two clubs. And thank you, everyone, again. Good night, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Where I am right now in Europe, it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning. So take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good night. Don't drive like my brother.
I will try not to drive at all.